welcome to the University of Essex. I'm Joe Holmes, your host for today's event. I'm a radio presenter, I'm on the advisory board of Lady Gaga's Born This Way Foundation, and I'm currently a first year creative writing student at the University of Essex. Now today's event is called Unknown, Unfinished, Undone, and you might think this theme is so vague. How does it relate to our 7 speakers and 3 performers this afternoon? Well, even something so vague as that can relate to everyone. Unknown, you've got no idea what you might learn at today's event. Unfinished, you can't wait for me to finish doing the introduction so we can get on with the first speaker, but don't worry, we've got some ground rules to go first. Undone, it's not done until it's done, so let me talk about some etiquette for watching this event on Zoom. Now, you're sat there on your computer, your phone, whatever you're watching, on Zoom watching this event. Please could you keep your microphone muted throughout the duration of the event, because otherwise you're going to pop up on screen and we're going to see you, and as sure as lovely as you are, we don't really want to see you today. If you do have your camera on, please make sure you're looking respectable, everything's appropriate, you're dressed appropriately, and you're not causing any unnecessary distraction to the audience. Now, to explain a bit more about this event, here is a video called What is TEDx?
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Our first speaker of today's event is Faustina Edward, an aspiring solicitor and the founder of the Unicorn Project. Now, Faustina is such a happy person, and on our first call together, the laughter was infectious. Now, in 2017, she moved here to pursue her law degree from the Caribbean island of St. Lucia. In 2018, she was named a highly commended runner-up Queen's Young Leader Award for her work in education-focused youth development. Here for her talk, Why You Should Care About Your Glitter Effect, is our first speaker, Faustina Edward.
Take a deep breath. You can close your eyes for a while if that helps you focus as we journey through a short visualization. You've gone for a quick supermarket run just to get a snack that you're craving. You get there and the supermarket is thankfully not busy. So you leave with no rush or delay. As you head back to your car or to the bus stop, you remove your mask just to get some fresh air. As you remove your mask, someone walking in your direction suddenly stops, almost starstruck. This massive smile comes across their face and you smile back, being courteous. They say hi and ask how you're doing. You say you're doing fine. Then they tell you that it is absolutely wild that they're bumping into you because just recently, something you posted on social media a few months ago really resonated with them. That statement, that post, it caused a small but impactful change in their life, and that change has led to almost a ripple effect because they have used your line and shared your post with others, and they just wanted to tell you 2 words. Thank you. You stand there looking at them, trying to understand how that post could have had such an effect. You say your goodbyes and you carry on to your car to the bus stop with a smile on your face, just thinking, wow. From this short visualization, I hope you experienced how good it felt to know that you could have such an impact on someone. Hi everyone, as Joe said, my name is Faustina. I'm an aspiring lawyer and I love glitter. I love glitter because it can be used in literally any situation. I love glitter because of the value it adds to anything it is used in. I love glitter because of how much it sticks to your skin even after 10 showers. And I love glitter because this is how I get to positively impact people all over the world. I'm going to tell you how I'm going to go about this talk because we all love a good spoiler, right? At least I do. Firstly, we're going to explore the reason why you should try to spread as much glitter as possible. Then, I'm going to give you ways how you can go about spreading glitter of your own. The reason why you should try to spread as much glitter as possible, shockingly, is not some complicated scientific calculation. It's simply because you don't know what someone is dealing with. So why not just be a good person and spread some joy or encouragement? Someone could be on the brink of tears and your "I believe in you" or "I'm here for you" can mean the world. Similarly, telling a friend who has a business to keep going or encouraging a classmate to sign up for an internship you think they would love can be life-changing. You have the ability to spark something in someone that neither of you could have imagined. And the best part about it, you don't have to be famous to do so. We've been led to think that only well-known, articulate, motivational speakers or celebrities can inspire people, and that is far from the truth. Everyone will not be positive all the time. That's just not how we're meant to be. But in those down times, we can be that light for someone so much so that it stays with them even when we leave. Our light, positivity, or glitter can give the nudge that they need to get started or even help them continue on their journey. So, how can you go about spreading glitter of your own? The obvious way would be words. As we're told in the Bible and other spiritual books, that life and death is in the power of the tongue. Did you know that speaking positively to plants helps them grow? Well, companies and secondary school students have tested this theory, but from my experience, seeing my mother speak to her plants daily, I can tell you that it works. It's almost wild to think that our words can have such an impact on something that cannot conceptualize or remember things like the human brain can. Now, let's think about the impact our words can have on people who can internalize and remember what we've said. I've had this happen to me over the summer as a work experience participant. My mentor for that week told me something that has greatly improved my self-confidence. Any law firm will be lucky to have you. 9 words that have arguably changed my outlook. So ever since I've done any applications, I've had this mindset. And when any rejections came back, I just thought, well, they lucked out. Our words can be immensely impactful, so remember to use them wisely. For many people around the world, communication is an issue. It can sometimes be hard to articulate how you're feeling or supporting someone. However, this is where our actions, mannerisms, and attitude come into play and how we can spread glitter without even thinking about it. This is something I strongly believe in as someone who stammers. Even though I love to talk, and even now as I'm in front of the camera, I stammer. But as I've gotten older, I always wanted people to remember me for things other than my stammer. In fact, before 2020, when I spoke publicly about my stammer, many people told me that they never realized it. While it could be because my speech and understanding my speech impediment has improved over the years, I believe that it is because of my positive attitude and being a light wherever I go. Because my goal is to be, as Cal Newport put it, so good they can't ignore you. In fact, I'll take it one step further to say, shine so brightly and spread so much glitter they can't ignore you. Even though I've been practicing and trying to figure out for months now, yes months, how to explain the reason why a 25-year-old is so fascinated by glitter, I want to leave you with one thing. Wherever you go, whatever you do, and however you do it. Be that source of positivity or inspiration to the people around you. Sometimes, 3 months or 3 years down the line, you may bump into them in a supermarket parking lot and they remind you of a speck of glitter you left that forever changed their life.
Our next speaker is Meera Shankar, a medical student at the University of Liverpool. At the age of 15, she published a research paper on tuberculosis awareness in tuberculosis prevalent areas, and this paper was published. And not just that, she's one of the youngest people to publish a medical research paper, and recommendations based on her paper were made to the government of India to rethink and rediscover their strategies. Now, what really strikes me about this talk, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Here's Meera Shankar with her talk, Public Health Literacy, the Prescription to End Confusion.
My asthma. They said they'd fix it, but it didn't make any difference at all.
Well, sometimes doctors make mistakes. Anna, you have to try twice as hard to fix them. Are you using your inhaler?
All the time. Go through one a week.
You sure you're using it right?
Do I look like an idiot?
No. Why don't you show me how your inhaler works?
What you've seen is not just a clip from a medical drama, but something that happens quite frequently in hospitals. I've heard countless stories of people wearing masks below their noses, wearing birth control rings as bracelets, even listing oxygen as an allergy. These easily avoidable mistakes bring out the faults in the healthcare system and the way that we educate the public. How many people have been confused by something they've heard their doctor say, or have walked out of their doctor's office completely clueless? In my experience working at a hospital in India, I noticed a huge difference between management of illness and successive treatment, even with the same level of treatment plan offered and doctor competency. While conducting research on tuberculosis awareness, I found that the government of India pioneered many containment strategies, but they failed to tailor these strategies to the varying health awareness of the public. The success to a healthy world is the health empowerment of its end users. Both the doctor and the patient must work together to achieve a common goal, that is, the health literacy of the public. The doctor needs to empower the patient and provide them the information to safeguard their own health, and the patient needs to understand and put in the effort to follow guidelines set by the healthcare professional. A study in Netherlands recently found that low health literacy translated into less involvement in medical decision-making for people of all race, gender, and income. As a medical student myself, I have seen firsthand how people of all demographics struggle to make decisions regarding their treatment and care, simply because they are unable to understand what their doctor has said to them. This confusion and inability to understand information required for decision-making points out the problems we still face in healthcare literacy. As recently as 40 years ago, tuberculosis was a huge threat in England and was one of the primary causes of death for hundreds of years. And yet, a once enormous public health threat was brought under control. And to do that, they started at the core of the problem, that is, public health awareness. Steve Jobs once said, "You have to start with the customer experience and work backwards towards the technology, not the other way around. In this case, the customer, that is the patient, must be at the core of their strategy." A lot of interest and funding goes to medical research, which is very important. But the knowledge is futile when the implementation does not address the biggest variable, which is human participation. It has its own socioeconomic, religious, cultural, and geographical differences, and this is what makes human participation such a difficult problem to tackle. Now let's look at each of these a little bit more closely. How do we turn the ocean of unknown into familiar facts of disease? Well, there are 3 steps. Firstly, we need to understand the health literacy level of the public. What are the specific areas we need to target? Secondly, we need to partner and engage with the public to turn illness into wellness. Finally, we need to set clearly defined endpoints backed with scientific data and periodic appraisal to test the effectiveness. So how do we understand the health literacy level of the public? Information spread is more powerful when presented in a manner that is more relatable to its audience. For example, social distancing in the time of a disease outbreak is a privilege for some people. Some people simply cannot afford to maintain distance in their living quarters. Hence, the idea of a social bubble with isolation of each individual bubble and continued use of masks makes more sense and is more likely to be followed. We need to keep it simple. Trying to teach people about particulate size matter and viral strains is not going to work for everyone. We need to make it engaging for the audience Use pictorial representations to leave a long-lasting impression and appeal to them. Moving on to the second step, how do we engage and partner with the public? Incentivization, not only for people to take better care of themselves, but for patients, for doctors and healthcare professionals to manage patient pool better is an effective strategy. In kindergarten, getting a gold star for a job well done motivates children to work harder and do better. At the same time, we use disincentivization for less than ideal compliance with actions. For example, sugar tax and tobacco tax, where companies were taxed based on their tobacco and sugar content in order to combat lifestyle diseases, was an effective strategy. How information is presented to the public has a huge impact on how information is received. Public health goals are more likely to be followed when they engage with the public and the presented data inspires the public to participate. Control the context and you control the mind. Control the mind and you control reality. A remarkable example of this is how India beat polio. Viral misinformation, pardon the pun, has historically traveled faster than vaccines in India. The history of vaccination in India offers some important lessons. While polio eradication was a success story, it has not been without challenges. India witnessed some serious resistance to vaccination, and yet it was a success not only because they understood the fears and apprehensions of the public, but because they took the vaccine doorstep to doorstep, thereby overcoming the hurdle of healthcare accessibility. Research funding and policies in medical sciences are incomplete without understanding and addressing the public's fears and apprehensions and building the confidence of the public. Healthcare is not only a right of the citizens of the world, but a duty, as they are equal participants in their own health. There are many tools we can use to improve health literacy, and some of the best ones are the most simple. Ask questions and advocate for each other. Interrupt when you need more information and take control of your own health. Your body is your most priceless possession. Make sure you know how you're caring for it. Thank you.
For the last 20 years, Sarah Jane Mannering has been researching wild bird behaviour. After studying falconry and researching how that works, she opened up her very own falconry centre. Now, after hearing Sarah Jane's talk for the very first time, I took my headphones off when I went for a walk and listened to the bird song instead. Now, not only does Sarah Jane travel around the UK to discuss conservation ideas, she's also a strong advocate for women in business. Now, here's Sarah Jane Mannering with Understanding How Birds Can Improve Our Life.
Have you ever thought of birds as integral to the future of human development? I have been lucky enough to share my life with birds for the last 10 years as part of a Bird of Prey Experience Day and Rehabilitation Centre, so I know firsthand the intricacies of bird behaviour, how they can relate to people in a very positive way, and how, through various kinds of work, they can help to rid our society of pests and diseases. You can train birds to fly free. They can catch food for themselves and their handlers, and farmers have often employed falconers and their trained birds of prey to actually deter pest species from their crop fields, things like rabbits, pigeons and rats. And where we're based, we're employed by the local farmer to drive geese off of the crop fields. Now, if left unchecked, these pest species can have a significant effect on the final yield of that crop for the year. So by employing us as falconers and by us flying our birds of prey and then deterring the pest species, what happens is the yield is far greater at the end of the year, and the effect of that is in the supermarket, the product price is a lot lower. So birds are helping to affect global food prices. And without a doubt, birds have stretched our imaginations. They've made us strive for better technology. Early aerospace engineers looked at the natural mechanics of bird flight, and they applied this to the very first planes ever invented. To this day, if you look at modern aircraft, you'll see the fuselage is the same aerodynamic shape as a bird's body, and the flaps and slats on the wings of a plane that allow the plane to take off and land, those designs were taken from the feathers on a bird's wing, which are employed to do exactly the same thing. But it isn't just travel and affordable food that birds can help us with. Birds are an emotional support for many people. They can help to heal our broken hearts and minds just simply by showing us that they want to stick around. Now, I think the bond between a bird that's free flying and a human handler is actually more significant than that of maybe a domesticated animal like a cat or a dog, for the simple reason that by them coming back to us after a free flight, they're basically telling us that they want to stick around. So that really brings us into a positive mental well-being state. We get feelings of trust, of loyalty, of friendship. And I think as a species we have suffered, certainly in this last year, from anxiety, depression, maybe not knowing what the future holds, feeling a lack of control. I think that birds can really bridge that gap between having these negative thoughts into a more positive mind space. Take, for example, one of my favourite roles within the rehabilitation centre. We go and we visit care homes and hospices across the UK, and we visit the residents there as part of therapy days. Now, what's so significant and so lovely is that the feedback we get from these visits is always 100% positive. What happens is they say it's an educational, inspirational and very healing experience. And it's really off the back of this that I would like to share with you all quite a personal story about one of the birds that came into our care when he was just a year old, and he was part of a rehabilitation project. So his name is Loki, and Loki is a raven. You may well have heard of Loki the raven. He certainly has a lot more social media friends than I do, and we like to share his errands around the farm and his exploits because it's a wonderful story of how birds can change our lives. It was very obvious when Loki came to us that he had been mistreated by his previous handler. We know this because he was frightened of things like gloves, so we assumed that he was maybe hit with a glove. And he had extreme anxiety and depression. He showed this in the form of aggression, so he would bite us if we went into his enclosure. And the most upsetting thing for me was when he would just run away from us. He would go and hide in the corner of his enclosure. He wanted to be as far away from us as he possibly could. Effectively, Loki was saying, "I've shut down." Now, for us as rehabilitators, it's so important to instill confidence in these sorts of birds so that they can have a happy all-round life. So what we started to do is we really forged a plan. We knew that in order to get Loki to be the best version of himself, we'd need to build a bond with him. So we took ourselves off to a local pet store and we wanted to get puzzle toys for him. Ravens are very intelligent birds, and so what we wanted to do was to engage with him, exercise that brilliant mind of his as well as his body. Now, there is sadly a gap in the market for raven toys. Who knew? So we had to settle for normal cat and dog treat toys. So we would put mealworms and cat biscuits in these toys. They were his favourite snacks. And what was happening was we started to build a real rapport with Loki. He would look forward to our visits into his enclosure because he knew he was going to play a game and get his favourite food. As well as this, we kitted out his aviary with all the raven mod cons. So lots of natural perching, a huge bath that's practically the size of a swimming pool for a raven, and lovely panoramic views of the scenery that he could now call home. And with his confidence growing, something really interesting happened. He started to vocalise to us. Ravens are very good mimics and they will pick up bits of human language, but remember, Loki had had a bad start, so he couldn't really form the words. What he was doing was he would hear maybe a laugh or a word that we'd said, and he would mix that into his own raven language. So it wasn't exactly human language, it was a Loki language. So he'd call that out to us, we would then call that back, and we opened up a dialogue. Even though it seemed really strange, and certainly sounded strange to people that were listening, it was such a fundamental part of his rehabilitation process, because what we were doing by opening up that dialogue, we could get that real bond with him again. So with his trust in us growing and his confidence building, we opened the door to his enclosure and he flew free. He went and he interacted with the local wildlife, he was walking around the farm, and at the end of it all, he came back. So we knew that he saw that enclosure as his home and his safe space. Loki is now 8 years old, so he's been with us for 7 years, and every single day we do exactly the same process. We open the door, he comes out, and he has a great time, and then he returns to us. So why is this such a poignant story for me? It is because I totally understand how Loki felt when he first came to our centre. I'm sure I'm not the only one that could stand here and say that I too have suffered from feelings of depression, anxiety, not being wanted, not feeling loved, and really feeling like I just wanted to shut the world away. What Loki taught me was that it is okay to forgive. This bird managed to open up his heart to us, the same species that had caused him harm in the past, and he let love in. And he grew with us, and he bonded with us, and he became a better version of himself because of that. So really, taking all of these things and applying it to my life, I realised it's okay to be vulnerable and it's okay to be scared, but really to let people in if they are willing to help. So Loki really helped me along my road to recovery too. So perhaps we should stop looking at birds as deeply instinctive creatures and see them for these adaptive, intelligent, sentient beings that they really are. I always think that birds are watching us from a distance, willing to forgive our intrusion into their environments if we could just give them a reason to. And isn't it the most wonderful thing that the very first thing a bird does as the sun rises and the very last thing a bird does as the sun sets is it sings. So no matter what trials that little bird has been through between dusk and dawn, it chooses to defiantly bathe our world in song. There is definitely a message of hope there for all of us. There are brighter things on the horizon. Change is always a good thing, and to really accept the new challenges as they come along. But most importantly, to really relish the days that we have right now, be in the present, and to let go of all of those past hurts in order to be a better version of you. And I do think that this is starting to permeate now more into our society. Take, for example, bird watching. That has absolutely soared in popularity over this last year. So much so that actually there are 10 times more people signing up to birdwatching surveys online than there was in 2019. Now, why is that? I honestly think that in the space left with our world effectively going on pause, we have started to notice them again. How pretty their feathers are, how beautiful their songs are, and how lovely it feels when the birds come and visit our garden feeders. We feel worthy. There's an element of friendship there, and all of this brings us into positive mental well-being. As well as that, communities are growing, certainly on social media. I am a member of about 4 different bird watching sites on social media, and the best part about them is you're encouraged to share your photos, to ID different birds and really help each other out, but also to visit local green spaces. So there's almost this idea of routine and getting out into the open, which again can really affect our positive state of mind. So all of this coming together, we can thank our feathered friends for a lot. We have community, we have affordable food, travel, environmental awareness. So from allowing us to conquer the skies to really helping us with our positive mental well-being, I believe that if we understand birds better, then we can make this planet a far more better place for all of us to live in for generations to come.
This is a man-made forest. It can spread over acres and acres of area, or it could fit in a small space, as small as your house garden. Age of this forest is just 2 years. I have a forest in backyard of my own house. It attracts a lot of biodiversity. I wake up to this every morning like a Disney princess. I am an entrepreneur who facilitates making of these forests professionally. We have helped factories, farms, schools, homes, resorts, apartment buildings, public parks, and even a zoo to have one of such forests. A forest is not an isolated piece of land where animals live together. A forest can be an integral part of our urban existence. A forest, for me, is a place so dense with trees that you just can't walk into it. It doesn't matter how big or small they are. Most of the world we live in today was forest. This was before human intervention. Then we built up our cities on those forests, like Sao Paulo, forgetting that we belong to nature as well, as much as 8.4 million other species on the planet. Our habitat stopped being our natural habitat, but not anymore for some of us. Few others and I today make these forests professionally, anywhere and everywhere. I am an industrial engineer. I specialized in making cars. In my previous job at Toyota, I learned how to convert natural resources into products. To give you an example, we would drip the sap out of a rubber tree, convert it into raw rubber, and make a tire out of it, the product. But these products can never become a natural resource again. We separate the elements from nature and convert them into an irreversible state. That's industrial production. Nature, on the other hand, works in a totally opposite way. Natural system produces by bringing elements together, atom by atom. All the natural products become a natural resource again. This is something which I learned when I made a forest in the backyard of my own house. And this was the first time I worked with the nature rather than against it. Since then, we have made 75 such forests in 25 cities across the world. Every time we work at a new place, we find that every single element needed to make a forest is available right around us. All we have to do is to bring these elements together and let the nature take over. To make a forest, we start with soil. We touch, feel, and even taste it to identify what properties it lacks. If the soil is made up of small particles, it becomes compact, so compact that water cannot seep in. We mix some local biomass available around, which can help soil become more porous. Water can now seep in. If the soil doesn't have capacity to hold the water, we would mix some more biomass, some water absorbent material like peat or bagasse, so soil can hold this water and it stays moist. To grow, plants need water, sunlight, and nutrition. What if the soil doesn't have any nutrition in it? We don't just add nutrition directly to the soil. That will be industrial way. It goes against the nature. We instead add microorganisms to the soil. They produce the nutrients in the soil naturally. They feed on the biomass we have mixed in the soil, so all they have to do is eat and multiply. And as their number grows, soil starts breathing again. It becomes alive. We survey the native tree species of the place. How do we decide what's native or not? Well, whatever existed before human intervention is native. That's the simple rule. We survey a national park to find the last remains of a natural forest. We survey the sacred groves or sacred forest around old temples. And if we don't find anything at all, we go to museums to see the seeds or wood of trees existing there a long time ago. We research old paintings, poems, and literature from the place to identify the tree species belonging there. Once we know our trees, we divide them in 4 different layers: shrub layer, subtree layer, tree layer, and canopy layer. We fix the ratios of each layer, and then we decide the percentage of each tree species in the mix. If we are making a fruit forest, we increase the percentage of fruit-bearing trees. It could be a flowering forest, a forest that attracts a lot of birds or bees, or it could simply be a native wild evergreen forest. We collect the seeds and germinate saplings out of them. We make sure that trees belonging to the same layer are not planted next to each other, or they will fight for the same vertical space when they grow tall. We plant the saplings close to each other. On the surface, we spread a thick layer of mulch. So when it's hot outside, the soil stays moist. When it's cold, frost formation happens only on the mulch. So soil can still breathe while it's freezing outside. This soil is very soft, so soft that roots can penetrate into it easily, rapidly. Initially, the forest doesn't seem like growing, but it's growing under the surface. In first 3 months, roots reach a depth of 1 meter. These roots form a mesh tightly holding the soil. Microbes and fungi live throughout this network of roots. So if some nutrition is not available in vicinity of a tree, these microbes are going to get the nutrition to the tree. Whenever it rains, magically, mushrooms appear overnight. And this means that soil below has a healthy fungal network. Once these roots are established, forest starts growing on the surface. As the forest grows, we keep watering it. For next 2 to 3 years, we water the forest. We want to keep all the water and soil nutrition only for our trees. So we remove the weeds growing on the ground. As this forest grows, it blocks the sunlight. Eventually, the forest becomes so dense that sunlight can't reach the ground anymore. Weeds cannot grow now because they need sunlight as well. At this stage, every single drop of water that falls into the forest doesn't evaporate back into the atmosphere. This dense forest condenses the moist air and retains its moisture. We gradually reduce and eventually stop watering the forest. And even without watering, the forest floor stays moist and sometimes even dark. Now, when a single leaf falls on this forest floor, it immediately starts decaying. This decayed biomass forms humus, which is food for the forest. As the forest grows, more leaves fall on the surface, means more humus is produced, means more food, so forest can grow still bigger. And this forest keeps growing exponentially. Once established, these forests are going to regenerate themselves again and again, probably forever. In a natural forest like this, no management is the best management. It's a tiny jungle party. This forest grows as a collective. If the same trees, same species, would have been planted independently, it won't grow so fast. And this is how we create a 100-year-old forest in just 10 years. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was Shibindu Sharma with a pre-recorded TED Talk. And because at our event we have to play some TED Talks, we wanted to give you that bit unknown. And I know I didn't introduce that, but that talk was called How to Grow a Forest in Your Back Garden. I really hope you enjoyed watching that pre-recorded TED Talk. But now we've got another talk from Lydia Berkaraj, and she's an Albanian immigrant studying to be a lawyer. Despite her and her family's hardships, she serves an example of thriving under difficult circumstances. Now, she followed her dream of studying abroad in the US. She outdid all of her expectations with a 4.0 GPA in her second semester, and not only did that, her self-confidence skyrocketed. Here to give her talk, Why Your Journey Serves You Better Than Your Destination, is Lydia Berkaraj.
Our journeys are what lead us to our goals, whether predicted or not. Let's celebrate the effort and not just the outcome. You may have heard of a quote by a man named Ralph Emerson that life is a journey and not a destination. As a destination-focused society, we often have a laser focus on particular end results. By shifting our philosophy from a focus on goals to journeys, we can increase our chances of not just initial success, but also long-term and continued success. Growing up, my granddad tried teaching me how to ride a bike for the first time as a little girl. And it was here now that I've realised that I hadn't actually understood the importance of my learning process and effort, and how this was what would eventually lead me to my end goal. I was so eager to get on this bike, regardless of the fact that I kept on falling repeatedly. I did not understand that I needed to learn and go through this process in order to get to my end goal of riding this bike successfully without falling. Instead of focusing on our destinations, our end goals, our results, I believe that as individuals, we actually need to pay more attention to our journeys. We can thrive when we understand what it means to find success in our journeys and not just our destinations. By celebrating your smaller steps, your milestones, your victories, and habits you develop, you're able to see what it is that you're doing that is contributing to your success or your failure in something. Now you may think to yourself, why should I bother doing this if I've already achieved what I wanted? And that would be a fair question. As humans, it's natural to have that inherent desire to keep pushing forward. And whilst this of course can be a great thing, it's important to remember this can be a double-edged sword. This is sometimes where we forget to appreciate our own peaks, dips and curves, but also the fundamental lessons we can learn from these. When we forget this, we may fall into a trap of missing out and not receiving a fully enhanced experience of the way we could be achieving our goals. Many of us make an active habit to plan, but where we greatly fall is reflecting and taking a step back after our achievements to understand what it is that we've learned and gained from the process itself. Planning without mindful reflection after is to gain 50% instead of 100%. Fail to reflect, fail to learn. When you see your goal towards something not as a destination, but as a long-term consistent journey, it will become easier to sustain the habits that got you there and achieved your goal in the first place. So how can we do this? Well, I call these the double R's: reflect and record. When I say reflection, I mean specifically reflect before you're moving forward onto your next task or goal. Look back to learn, not to compare. Make sure you're actively and frequently asking yourself, what is it that I've learned and how can I utilize this in practice more? By identifying and reviewing these actions that have led to your wins and your losses, it will become easier to follow through and sustain these behaviors so that you can continue improving. Viewing success as fixed can often lead to its benefits slipping faster than they came, and that is of course not what we want. Now perhaps an even more important skill is to record. Note down what it is that you've learned. This in itself will force you to be more mindful of the journey you've been on and will equip you for new challenges. Think about the skills you've gained, the lessons you've learned, and the obstacles you've overcame. The key here is little and often. Take notes in a diary weekly to track your progress, but do not fixate or limit yourself to the results. Remember, progressing towards a goal requires consistency, not just one big leap. Try not to think of these as chores. Once you get in the habit of practicing this more frequently, you may actually come to the realization that you'll enjoy the process itself. If you think of this as something you need to do rather than want, it may just defeat the whole point. It isn't out of necessity, but out of a desire to improve ourselves. Now, taking all of this on, just think back to a time in your life when you were striving towards something you were passionate about, and when you finally achieved it. It could be your savings for a holiday or a house, or what sometimes seems like endless studying for a qualification you dream of. Could you have done this without the hard work and the lessons beforehand? Chances are probably not. It would be near impossible. In my second year of university, I was preparing to study abroad for the next academic year. I knew I had to reach 2 goals in order to do this. The first was that my grades were high enough so that I could surpass the academic requirements and continue with my application. The second was making sure that I was saving enough money so that whilst I was actually studying abroad, I was financially stable and not having to worry about money. This was key preparation. And at the time, I'd failed to reflect on the lessons these 2 smaller objectives were teaching me. If I had, I would have soon realised that I was learning how to manage myself successfully, both academically and financially. Now, the focus here is my end goal of studying abroad, but rather the fact that I'd gained and improved vital skills that would help me time and time again in various future situations. Instead of fearing the lessons and hardships that accompany us on our journeys, why don't we embrace them? Our goals are not static, they are constantly changing, so why do we view them in a way that holds us back? After all, smooth water's never made a skilled sailor, and we'll experience the most learning when we step outside of our comfort zones and when we reflect upon our past lessons. It is necessary for our personal and professional growth sometimes to emphasise the journey that brought us to our end goals and the development we've underwent, instead of just the end goal. Yes, winning is great, and it's not a bad thing to desire this as your end goal. In fact, goals are what help us aim for success. But as humans, once we get what we want, we tend to almost immediately move on to our next goals. We can get momentary satisfaction here, but not quite long-term fulfillment, so success feels very temporary. And so if you take one thing away from today, it is this. If you shift your perspective from your destination to your journey, you can have more impactful and long-term growth in both your personal and professional life. You will learn to become more comfortable with discomfort, and you'll understand the gravity of reflecting upon your past lessons and your journey itself. Shift your perspective, change your mindset, and see the results. Thank you for listening.
Our first performance of today's event is from 21-year-old Hong Kong indie singer-songwriter Lexus Sun. He's currently a third-year law student, although, don't worry, he doesn't want to be a lawyer, so he's not going to sue us. So, performing his incredible original song, Petrol Tower, this is Lexus Sun.
Hey guys, I'm Lexus. I'm a singer-songwriter. Today I'm gonna play you guys a song. It's an original. It's about change. It's about being in this very world right now with everything that's happening. And yeah, quarantine, I guess. It's called Petrol Tower. I hope you like it. There goes another night. Well, I'm dreaming of you. Sometimes it gets so heavy. You had to leave. Escape from the choke of reality. Get high and fly your mind away. Here I am here, being sucked into this groove of oblivion. The freedom calling from but still another city hill. Oh, people, burn. Fire, let them hurt. There's no escape, you're gonna get burned. People come and people go. I am so high yet so low. There's no escape, you're gonna get burned. So there goes another night. Well, I'm dreaming of you. Sometimes it gets so heavy. You had to leave.
Now our next speaker is Lorena Gader-Kamstra. She's a language lecturer at the Department of Language and Linguistics right here at the University of Essex. She researches language teaching and the motivation of demotivation of teachers. What I really took away from this talk is we need to embrace the messy parts of our life and understand that we don't always get things right the first time or the 5th time. Here with her talk, Let's Defy Obstacles and Embrace Messy Research, is Lorena Gader-Kamstra.
Introduction, literature review, methods, results, discussion, conclusion, references. These sections may be familiar to you. These are the sections that we normally find in a research paper or article. And today, I'm going to tell you that sometimes, and more often than you think, there are issues with the methodology or with analysis which are never discussed in any of these sections in the research paper. When we read book chapters or journal articles with scientific studies, we often think, wow, that was perfectly written, and that is the perfect way to investigate that issue. You may think that those are the real scientists with flawless projects and fascinating results. However, most of the time, this perfect representation of research is not really what happened. We never see the struggles that researchers face when, for example, recruiting participants, conducting an experiment, or analyzing the data. And more importantly, we never get to know how they solve those difficulties, because the investigations are reported as ideal. It seems as if the project was perfectly designed and conducted, and as if the analysis led to successful results. Today, I'm going to discuss a particular problem from my own project to show that conducting research is not always ideal. The dilemmas researchers face and the things that go wrong in an investigation are often unknown. Researchers don't share the research dilemmas because obstacles are often regarded as something negative. Unexpected obstacles show that the investigation is messy, therefore it shows that something went wrong with the study. Many researchers believe that by reporting these issues, their data will be weakened. Authors think that by discussing these problems, they risk their chances at publishing in top journals. But sharing an idealized version of the project is not an honest report and is not helpful or useful to readers. Obstacles should be acknowledged. And researchers should understand that a research breakdown can result in a new opportunity and a new mystery to be solved, which later needs to be shared with the research community. The students should also learn that not all research processes are perfect or ideal, and regardless of your experience, obstacles are part of the research process, which is also a learning process. Doing research is not an easy task. It's rather chaotic, and it looks something like this. Doing research is messy and it has challenges, but from overcoming challenges we can create a solid study. Although an investigation has been carefully designed, unexpected issues happen and the research plans will need to be changed. These changes will support the research process while also taking into account these unpredicted events. We should embrace and defy research obstacles while learning from them. We should share the solutions to our obstacles with the community, so others can learn that chaotic and messy research can also result in valid and good research. To show the realities of doing research, I will tell you an example from my own project and I will explain how my research obstacle led to an improved investigation. In my study, I analyzed teacher motivation to teach English as a foreign language. And the research design follow a mixed methods approach, which is the combination of quantitative and qualitative research. I use a questionnaire for the quantitative part and interviews with teachers for the qualitative part of the investigation. This questionnaire was tested and it showed low levels of reliability, correlation and variance at the pilot study stage. This meant that the questionnaire was of no use whatsoever. And this would be a nightmare for any researcher, and it was definitely a nightmare for me. You spend so much time and effort reading, designing, and conducting your study that you want a positive outcome. Unfortunately, many times this does not happen. Things go wrong, and you find yourself facing this undeniable fact. Your research is a mess. And nobody told you that this could happen. This is something that nobody shares when doing research, and you have only seen what they wanted you to see. It's once again the iceberg illusion. We just see a part of the investigation which is almost perfect, but there was a lot more to tell and a lot more to know. In my study, questionnaire results were completely unexpected. I had never read a publication with similar methodological issues. I wonder if authors reconsidered their approaches, made mistakes, or had any issues while researching. Publications often have a short section on limitations, but these limitations were described as if authors were aware of them at all times. The perfect investigations that I read did not look like the unexpected issues that I was facing, which made the research process and the struggle more taxing and unsettling. The materials new researchers turn to for guidance sometimes offer unrealistic research models, because the research models are almost perfect. The misrepresentation of research in published textbooks and articles discourage me, and may discourage MA and PhD researchers. At that time, I was lucky enough to find the work of Rosa McKinley. This book definitely reassured me, and I realized that I was not alone. They discuss how researchers encounter challenges in applied linguistics, which is my field, and they argue that published research seems to be ideal, and the reader may never know the struggles the researchers faced during their methodological journey and the compromises made during this time. Researchers typically face challenges, and they make decisions about how to handle these problems, but by not showing and by not sharing these obstacles, they are depriving new and experienced researchers from learning about valuable solutions to common struggles among researchers. The dreadful results from my questionnaire were completely unexpected, and they definitely discouraged me. I could see that the questionnaire was not working, and instead of disregarding this questionnaire completely, I used some of the most reliable items from the questionnaire and I created some interview prompts. These interview prompts were some cards with ideas, statements, and tasks, which were used as break activities in the interviews with the teachers. As you can see in this slide, aloud, participants could complete sentences, a motivated teacher is, or they could fill in the gaps, I am, with a degree of respect and fair treatment I've received from this school or high school. Participants could also move these cards to a particular opinion. For example, in this task, is this element important for you? Having a good relationship with my students' parents? Yes, no, so. Or in this other task, do you agree or disagree with these statements? For example, this statement, I often think of quitting this job. Agree or disagree. These interview prompts allow me to do research in a more creative and active way, and they also enable a powerful discussion with teachers during the interviews. Unlike most published research, in my PhD thesis and in other publications I'm preparing, I have decided to portray the problems that I faced, because these challenges led me to making compromises and changes which resulted in a better understanding of teacher motivation in this particular context. And they also enabled the creation of an original research instrument, the interview prompts. I have decided to embrace my iceberg, because I believe that those studies which do not review the issues encountered by researchers are unfinished. I encourage researchers, those who are starting and those with experience, to embrace the research obstacles and to share the solutions with the community, so they are useful to all the scientists. This is especially important for those who are conducting their first studies and need to find real research in the resources that they read. So if you're having trouble with your project, remember that you're not alone. Reflect on the problem And when you find a solution, share your research dilemma and the problem with the research community. We can all benefit from it. We can learn that those obstacles are not the end of the world. And they don't mean that you're a bad researcher. Instead, the fact that you're able to solve those problems show that you're a good researcher with problem-solving and analytic skills. More importantly, when you share the obstacles that you have faced, this increases your credibility as an author and the validity of your research. So in conclusion, embrace the problems that you find in your research, solve them and share them. Acknowledge your research obstacles and praise those researchers who are brave enough to share their obstacles with the research community, because there is not a perfect way of doing research. Thank you.
Now our next speaker is a high school dropout who became a bank executive. That was until Anthony met and decided he wasn't going to play by everyone else's rules and wanted to live his life for himself, and left his job to become into full-time education at the age of 44. He's now a professional certified coach, part of the International Coach Federation, and he's living the life he truly loves. Here is Anthony Metten with his talk, Individuation. What if who you are isn't really who you are?
Consider this. What if there was something you could do to change your perception about what was possible and what your life could actually be like? Would you do it? And what if you could decide who you were supposed to be and then live that authentic life despite what you've learned and been told by other people? The good news is, if you want to, you can. It's a process we all go through. It's called individuation. Let's start here, though. If I said, which came first? Most people would say I was referring to the never-ending chicken or the egg debate, and they'd be right. Science will tell us, though, that it's actually the egg that came first. Now, it turns out that the chicken is what came out of the egg, but the egg came from a different species, which was most likely the jungle fowl of Southeast Asia. That's evolution. And like that first chicken, who we are from birth, well, that's not exactly who we're meant to be as an adult. And becoming who we're truly meant to be is a must for us and those around us to truly live a happy and successful life. It's our personal evolution into individuation. Now, individuation is a complex and multifaceted topic, but if I could simplify it for you, I would say individuation is like adult puberty. Now, stick with me for just a moment. Puberty, no matter what our childhood and family dynamics while growing up, well, as kids, we all have a sense, or we've heard, have an idea that something around the age of 13 is going to happen, and it's going to change the way we behave and feel. Individuation, on the other hand, is something that nobody's ever told us about. But like puberty, it affects all of us, potentially several times, and like puberty, it too changes the way we behave and feel. So if I could give you a clinical description of individuation, it would come from Carl Jung, who's one of the forefathers of modern psychology. And Jung describes individuation as a central process of human development. He says that it encompasses the philosophical, spiritual, and mystical areas of the human being. And in the broadest sense of the term, individuation can be defined as the achievement of self-actualization through the integration of our conscious and our unconscious. And maybe an easier way to say that would be that it's like taking your desires and dreams and making them a part of your everyday life and who you are. Now, the disconnect, and part of the reason individuation is a part of our life, starts when we're growing up. Because when we're children, rather than becoming who we're innately meant to be, we have to take on the persona and personalities of our families so we can be accepted as one of theirs, be taken care of, and hopefully made love, right? But we quickly learn, I guess, that we need to go along to get along, but in doing so, we fail to blossom into who we would otherwise naturally become. Now, as we mature, we have a responsibility to evolve and individuate into an adult and become the person we are meant to be so we can bring our true gifts and talents to the world. And at the end of the day, isn't that something you'd wish for everybody, especially those you love? Now, I think about what it must have been like for that first chicken. It potentially went from predator to prey in one generation, and I can picture two lions in the jungle talking to each other. One says, "Hey, I wonder what jungle fowl tastes like." And the other one says, "You know what? I bet you it tastes just like chicken." "Hey, who you calling chicken?" Now, I have my own chicken and the egg story. See, some time ago, I hired my first executive coach to help me get a promotion that I was working on, but so far was unsuccessful in achieving. And what the coach and I quickly discovered was that the reason I wasn't getting the promotion had nothing to do with my job performance. It was because I was still that little boy living the life that I felt my family expected me to live, and me desperately trying to please everyone around. And I'm sure you can see how that type of behavior really wouldn't work well in the corporate setting, and clearly my coach had his work cut out for him. Now, that way of being, that personality for me started when I was a child, because like many children, I didn't feel like I got the love or attention I wanted or needed, and so I had a hard time understanding what I was supposed to be doing or really how to go about doing it. And I would jokingly say that what I went through as a child was PADD, Parental Attention Deficit Disorder. Now, that's not a real thing, I just made that up. But what that PADD gave me was the ability to understand how to be in service to others, to get what I needed, and to take care of myself. And, you know, that situation, that what I went through was a curse and a blessing, right? Because on the one hand, it left me feeling alone and wanting the attention of my mother. But on the other hand, it taught me to be self-sufficient and take care of myself. I mean, life's funny that way. As I got older, I figured out that, you know what, if I had a job with status, well, that could help me find some of the connection and attention I wanted with my mother. So when I found an opportunity to apply for a bank manager job, I jumped on it because I knew that that would be a career choice that would make her happy. Now, I didn't belong in the banking industry, but my learned childhood people-pleasing social skills, well, they kept me in the game and moving along until I eventually hit a promotion roadblock that I couldn't get past. And so I strategized that if I would hire that executive coach I mentioned, I could get the promotion. And you know what? I was right. And the day that my promotion was made public, after the announcement, I called my coach to tell him the good news. And while speaking to him, I broke down into uncontrollable tears that I didn't understand. It's like, what's happening? I just got the promotion of a lifetime, and here I am melting down emotionally. And that was my first sign something's not right, but I didn't quite understand what. 6 weeks later, I actually wound up quitting that job because after thinking about it, I thought, you know, the only reason I'm doing this is to prove that I'm worthy of the love and attention I want from my wife and my mother, but you know what? I'm not doing this for me. And that was a second sign. Something's not right, but this time I knew something was about to change. So after consideration, I decided I'm going to go back to school, get a master's degree in counseling psychology with an emphasis on career development. And I didn't discuss the idea with my wife or my mother. I really didn't care what they thought. This felt like for the first time I was making a decision for me, by me, damn whatever consequences there might be. Now, one of the ideas that I didn't really work out was as a full-time student, you know, how was I going to survive financially? And then one day out of the clear blue, I got a call from one of my previous direct reports from the bank, Julie, who now was a fashion and design teacher at a local continuing education school. And Julie says, "Hey, Anthony, I want you to come down and teach my students about professionalism." I thought, you want me to do what? I've never taught a class in my life, and I'm scared stiff of public speaking. But I also knew that, you know what, I'm the type of person that if somebody needs help and I can, I will. So I did the best job I could at putting together a presentation, and a week later I was down in Julie's class to give it. And here's the kicker. Not only did it go over well, but it felt great. For the first time, I felt like I was being recognized for my true talents and skills, and like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, rather than what I experienced every other day, and that was to produce in areas where clearly I had shortcomings. Now, word got around about my class, and before I knew it, I was getting paid to present on the topic of professionalism at multiple schools in the area. And that was the start of my individuation journey, becoming my own person, by no longer being the person others expected me to be, and discovering and becoming the person I am today. So, if I were to give you an example, going back and using the jungle fowl and the chicken, I would say that, you know, like them, individuation is a chicken and the egg question. I mean, which came first, the healthy family or the individuated child? Now, I personally think that a child who grows up in a healthy household, who's encouraged to go out and be their best and discover their natural talents and skills, I think that child has the best chance of going through at least the initial stages of individuation early, like maybe when they're going off to college, potentially University of Essex, choosing a major and what they want to do with the rest of their life. And somebody who goes through individuation often and early truly has the best chance of living a healthy, fulfilling, and happy life, and then passing that experience on to the next generation. Now, if I were to give you a real-life condensed version of what we're talking about here, because I know it's a lot of information, I would tell you about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Now, politics aside, and no matter how their tale ends, theirs is a tale of individuation. They're breaking away from the royal family and the expectations put upon them to insist on living the life that they felt was right for them so they could then pursue the things that they felt were important. Well, that's what individuation in this talk is all about. And let's be clear, this isn't about being selfish or self-centered. This is about giving everything you have to this one life in the only possible way you can, and that is to be who you're truly meant to be. Now, if you find yourself going through a phase of individuation, it's probably going to be a rough and bumpy road because it usually involves change, and change is never easy. And for me, in this example that I'm giving you today, well, it cost me my marriage of 19 years and the relationship with my mother. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but I would tell you that today I'm the happiest and most successful I've ever been. And let's be clear, it's not because I'm a banker. And some of the last words my wife said to me as my wife was, you know what, Anthony? Status is important to me, and you don't have it anymore. Okay? And although my mother was willing to stay in communication with me via text on birthdays and holidays, she was never willing to go back to really having a relationship with me unless I was willing to go back to being the person she expected me to be. And I would say that my individuation choices were sealed in eternity when I sent her the last happy birthday text. This is the response I got.
Hello, Anthony. I had a wonderful week after my pacemaker implant. But I left this earth and went to heaven on June 27th at 10:34 a.m. Official cause of death, heart failure. I have been cremated as per my wishes, and my ashes reside peacefully at home in the blue and white china urn Randy and I picked out for the two of us. As I am no longer here, there is no need to continue texting me.
So I can only imagine that it was my stepfather who sent that text, but he sent it on my mother's phone in words my mother herself would have spoken. It was haunting. I received his text 14 days after I sent mine, and 3 months apparently after my mother had passed, which was the first I'd ever heard of it. And you might want to say, Anthony, that's got to be a one-off. And I would tell you that unfortunately it's not. I work with countless clients, young and mature, who share similar tragic yet successful stories of how they uncovered the unaddressed roadblocks in their life through the disconnection of relationships that were no longer serving them. So here's what I want to do. I want to give you 3 very simple questions for you to ask yourself and possibly see where you are on your own individuation journey. Question number 1. Is who you are who you're meant to be? Is it your life you're living, your career you're pursuing, your hobbies you're enjoying, or are they things that somebody else has said, hey, this is what you ought to be doing with your life? Question number 2, whose expectations are you fulfilling? Yours or someone else's? And question number 3, are the things you do each day the things that make you happy and come to you naturally, even the difficult things? Or do you struggle every day to fulfill the basic requirements? I know they're 3 simple questions, but I promise you this. If you give them the time and space needed to truly be considered, you'll probably be amazed at the answers you come up with for yourself. In the end, explore your life. Ask questions. Talk to people. Find a mentor and find what matters to you and where you feel like you can thrive. We need to believe that who we truly are and the things that we want to accomplish matter and are the best path forward, no matter what those around us think and feel. Doing so is the quickest way to discover your true potential and the impact you can make on not only the world, but yourself. And at the end of the day, isn't that something we would want for everybody, especially those we love? That's all I have.
Thank you, Anthony. That was a great talk. Now we're going to have another pre-recorded talk, and it's Amanda Palmer with The Art of Asking.
so I didn't always make my living from music. For about the 5 years after graduating from an upstanding liberal arts university, this was my day job. I was a self-employed living statue called the 8-Foot Bride, and I love telling people I did this for a job because everybody always wants to know who are these freaks in real life. Hello. I painted myself white one day, stood on a box, put a hat or a can at my feet, and when someone came by and dropped in money, I handed them a flower and some intense eye contact. And if they didn't take the flower, I threw in a gesture of sadness and longing as they walked away. So I had the most profound encounters with people, especially lonely people who looked like they hadn't talked to anyone in weeks. And we would get this beautiful moment of prolonged eye contact being allowed in a city street, and we would sort of fall in love a little bit. And my eyes would say, "Thank you, I see you." And their eyes would say, "Nobody ever sees me. Thank you." And I would get harassed. Sometimes people would yell at me from their passing cars, "Get a job!" And I'd be like, "This is my job." But it hurt because it made me fear that I was somehow doing something unjob-like and unfair, shameful. I had no idea how perfect a real education I was getting for the music business on this box. And for the economists out there, you may be interested to know I actually made a pretty predictable income, which was shocking to me given I had no regular customers, but pretty much $60 on a Tuesday, $90 on a Friday. It was consistent. And meanwhile, I was touring locally and playing in nightclubs with my band, the Dresden Dolls. This was me on piano, a genius drummer. I wrote the songs. And eventually, we started making enough money that I could quit being a statue. And as we started touring, I really didn't want to lose this sense of direct connection with people because I loved it. So after all of our shows, we would sign autographs and hug fans and hang out and talk to people. And we made an art out of asking people to help us and join us. And I would track down local musicians and artists, and they would set up outside of our shows, and they would pass the hat, and then they would come in and join us on stage. So we had this rotating smorgasbord of weird, random circus guests. And then Twitter came along and made things even more magic because I could ask instantly for anything, anywhere. So I would need a piano to practice on, and an hour later, I would be at a fan's house. This is in London. People would bring home-cooked food to us all over the world backstage and feed us and eat with us. This is in Seattle. Fans who worked in museums and stores and any kind of public space would wave their hands if I would decide to do a last-minute spontaneous free gig. This is a library in Auckland. On Saturday, I tweeted for this crate and hat because I did not want to schlep them from the East Coast, and they showed up care of this dude, Chris from Newport Beach, who says hello. I once tweeted, "Where in Melbourne can I buy a neti pot?" And a nurse from a hospital drove one right at that moment to the cafe I was in, and I bought her a smoothie, and we sat there talking about nursing and death. And I love this kind of random closeness, which is lucky because I do a lot of couch surfing. In mansions where everyone on my crew gets their own room, but there's no wireless, and in punk squats, everyone on the floor in one room with no toilets, but with wireless, clearly making it the better option. My crew once pulled our van up to a really poor Miami neighborhood, and we found out that our couch surfing host for the night was an 18-year-old girl still living at home, and her family were all undocumented immigrants from Honduras. And that night, her whole family took the couches, and she slept together with her mom so that we could take their beds. And I lay there thinking, these people have so little. Is this fair? And in the morning, her mom taught us how to try to make tortillas and wanted to give me a Bible. And she took me aside and she said to me in her broken English, "Your music has helped my daughter so much. Thank you for staying here. We're all so grateful." And I thought, this is fair. This is this. A couple months later, I was in Manhattan, and I tweeted for a crash pad, and at midnight, I'm ringing a doorbell on the Lower East Side, and it occurs to me, I've never actually done this alone. I've always been with my band or my crew. Is this what stupid people do? Is this how stupid people die? And before I can change my mind, the door busts open. She's an artist. He's a financial blogger for Reuters. And they're pouring me a glass of red wine and offering me a bath, and I have had thousands of nights like that and like that. So I couch surf a lot. I also crowd surf a lot. I maintain couch surfing and crowd surfing are basically the same thing. You're falling into the audience, and you're trusting each other. I once asked an opening band of mine if they wanted to go out into the crowd and pass the hat to get themselves some extra money, something that I did a lot. And as usual, the band was psyched, but there was this one guy in the band who told me he just couldn't bring himself to go out there. It felt too much like begging to stand there with the hat. And I recognized his fear of, is this fair? And get a job. And meanwhile, my band is becoming bigger and bigger. We sign with a major label. And our music is a cross between punk and cabaret. It's not for everybody. But, well, maybe it's for you. We sign, and there's all this hype leading up to our next record. And it comes out, and it sells about 25,000 copies in the first few weeks. And the label considers this a failure. And I was like, 25,000, isn't that a lot? They were like, no, the sales are going down, it's a failure, and they walk off. Right at the same time, I'm signing and hugging after a gig, and a guy comes up to me and hands me a $10 bill. And he says, "I'm sorry, I burned your CD from a friend." But I read your blog, I know you hate your label, I just want you to have this money. And this starts happening all the time. I become the hat after my own gigs, but I have to physically stand there and take the help from people. And unlike the guy in the opening band, I've actually had a lot of practice standing there. Thank you. And this is the moment I decide I'm just going to give away my music for free online whenever possible. So it's like Metallica over here. Napster, bad. Amanda Palmer over here. And I'm going to encourage torrenting, downloading, sharing, but I'm going to ask for help because I saw it work on the street. So I fought my way off my label, and for my next project with my new band, the Grand Theft Orchestra, I turned to crowdfunding. And I fell into those thousands of connections that I'd made, and I asked my crowd to catch me. And the goal was $100,000. My fans backed me at nearly 1.2 million, which was the biggest music crowdfunding project to date. And you can see how many people it is. It's about 25,000 people. And the media asked, "Amanda, the music business is tanking and you encourage piracy. How do you make all these people pay for music?" And the real answer is, I didn't make them. I asked them. And through the very act of asking people, I'd connected with them. And when you connect with them, people want to help you. It's kind of counterintuitive for a lot of artists. They don't want to ask for things, but it's not easy. It's not easy to ask. And a lot of artists have a problem with this. Asking makes you vulnerable. And I got a lot of criticism online after my Kickstarter went big for continuing my crazy crowdsourcing practices, specifically for asking musicians who are fans if they wanted to join us on stage for a few songs in exchange for love and tickets and beer. And this was a doctored image that went up of me on a website. And this hurt in a really familiar way. And people saying, you're not allowed anymore to ask for that kind of help really reminded me of the people in their cars yelling, get a job. Because they weren't with us on the sidewalk, and they couldn't see the exchange that was happening between me and my crowd, an exchange that was very fair to us, but alien to them. So this is slightly not safe for work. This is my Kickstarter backer party in Berlin. At the end of the night, I stripped and let everyone draw on me. Now, let me tell you, if you want to experience the visceral feeling of trusting strangers, I recommend this, especially if those strangers are drunk German people. This was a ninja master level fan connection, because what I was really saying here was, I trust you this much. Should I? Show me. For most of human history, musicians, artists, they've been part of the community. Connectors and openers, not untouchable stars. Celebrity is about a lot of people loving you from a distance. But the internet and the content that we're freely able to share on it are taking us back. It's about a few people loving you up close, and about those people being enough. So a lot of people are confused by the idea of no hard sticker price. They see it as an unpredictable risk. But the things I've done, the Kickstarter, the street, the doorbell, I don't see these things as risk. I see them as trust. Now, the online tools to make the exchange as easy and as instinctive as the street, they're getting there. But the perfect tools aren't going to help us if we can't face each other and give and receive fearlessly, but more important, to ask without shame. My music career has been spent trying to encounter people on the internet the way I could on the box. So blogging and tweeting, not just about my tour dates and my new video, but about our work and our art and our fears and our hangovers, our mistakes, and we see each other. And I think when we really see each other, we want to help each other. I think people have been obsessed with the wrong question, which is, how do we make people pay for music? What if we started asking, how do we let people pay for music? Thank you.
So now we've got another performance from the incredible Vanessa Verse. When she's not doing cyber support for the US Air Force, she's writing and reciting spoken word poetry. It's really good, and I hope you sit still and listen to this wonderful poetry. She's currently living in Germany, and she was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. Here performing her original poem, On Time, is Vanessa Verse.
The father who raised time already knew it was going to be stubborn. I've seen time prove itself to be stuck in its ways. There's no changing time, no matter how much it grows. But it knows what's good for us. Like a mentor, a guide, we listen, follow even if it doesn't follow us back. Plan to be on time, but who determines when it's too late or too early? Never notified when we're on time, just constantly reminded of how every second is irreplaceable. So on time can be anytime, right? I remember when unknown hours scared me. Seconds made my heart shiver. Days only halfway happened, and nights presented themselves as a 2-for-1. What is time, if not a confusing ride through places only the brave would go? Because I remember when I was scared that we could never be on time. You see, we turned his living room into a music library, constructed by our memories held closest to our ears, lyrics that surround our hearts, and we exposed the full parts of us. We poured into each other's empties, each patient yet excited vessel. We never thought we could be filled by anyone strong enough to hold the weight of our favorite songs, or anyone with healthy contents or intentions that match our playlist. And we just stared at each other, knowing love is present, but scared to say it out loud, scared that this might be too late or a little too much. And we just wanted to make sure that when it leaves our lips, there's no question that we mean it. Hoping music can say things we're not able to say ourselves, we're both wondering if this could be our time, because we knew he was deploying. We bloomed into our emotions, left in albums from our past, introduced the artists that left us speechless or helped us when we were restless. We took our time in his living room, adding to each other's clouds, because time doesn't ever stay still when you need it to. Time is never on your side when you're active duty and there's something real in front of you. Time has never known this feeling in my chest, has never danced with these butterflies that break dance to old school break beats when he looks at me. Whenever we pick at each other's brains, when we slip lyrics into conversations and pull out sound out of our fingertips that know exactly where to touch us, the same way we really wanted to say, I love you. But we're scared because time doesn't know how to dance, probably because it never listens. It just knows how to leave, so it smiles when others do the same. So when is on time enough to say we're ready? What is on time if not right now, when time zones exist and the moments are documented by timestamps? I don't wear a watch. And I can't tell you a date. I can't tell you the time, but I can describe to you the feeling, how everything looked, play back my memories and sit an audience in my personal time machine, and no one will ever know if we're ready, if it was too early, or if it was too late. Sometimes it's just right, even if it wasn't on time. Thank you for listening. My name is Vanessa Benahar, poetically known as Vanessa Verse.
Our next speaker is George Lennon Jr. He's in the US Air Force and has served for over 7 years, also living in Germany while he serves his time. Now, he helps teach staff sergeants how to express themselves and how to be trained to the best of their ability, but he likes to express himself through spoken word poetry. Always remember this, because after a day of back-to-back rehearsals, when we're all feeling tired, George practiced what he preached and asked us all how we were doing, and George, I really appreciate that. Here with his talk, How to Change the World, Your Superpower, here's George Lennon Jr.
If you could have any superpower, what would you pick? Super speed, super strength, invisibility, invincibility? Mind reading would be cool. See, a lot of us love to entertain this question, because we're under the impression that we don't have superpowers. And we also believe that if we did have superpowers, we'd use it to save the world. Well, what if you were told that everyone watching actually does have a superpower, and you can use it to change the world instead of just waiting to save it? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to tell you that the secret is out. Everybody has a superpower. And for free $99, I'm going to teach you 3 skills that you need to unlock and master to be able to use your superpower to change the world. But before I get into that, I want to tell you about how I stumbled upon this fact that we all have a superpower and we can use it to change the world. It all started back in 2016. I met a man named Cameron when I was stationed at Osan Air Base, South Korea. Now, Cameron likes to be called Cam, so I'm going to call him that for the rest of the talk. But Cam was my supervisor. And there's a couple things that you need to know about Cam. So 1, he's a carpenter in the United States Air Force. He's a father. He's a husband. And just like me, he's an artist. You see, over time, Cam discovered that we both had a mutual love for poetry. And one day we got in a heated discussion, which was really an argument. And Cam ended that argument by saying, you know what? You just need to come to the open mic and see me perform my poem, and then you'll understand me better. You'll understand where I'm coming from. Now, I don't know if you guys normally win a lot of arguments, but I don't. But I tell you what, that was one hell of a way to win an argument, because 1, I was confused, and 2, he challenged me and I accepted it and we stopped arguing. I guess he won that one. But that's what started changing my world, because he challenged me to go watch him express himself, but he also challenged me to get on the stage as well. And that is what's going to lead us to our first skill that you need to unlock, which is caring. Now, before I go a little bit deeper into it, I want to let you know, as we go through this talk or tutorial on how to use your superpowers, I'll be assigning each of these skills to a finger so that way you won't forget, and it'll also make sense at the end. But caring will be assigned to our thumb. Now, you can remember this like giving someone a thumbs up, some affirmation, go ahead, I'm rooting for you, but caring will be assigned to our thumb, so don't forget. But why do I need to care in order to use my superpower to change the world? Well, if you're planning on changing the world, you need to know that we have to be able to affect people. And if we're going to positively affect people, what better way to do that than to be genuinely empathetic? You see, to care means to feel concern or interest. To feel concern or interest. Think about the person you care about the most, or someone that cares about you. There's an affinity to know about their well-being. You genuinely want to know what's going on in their lives. You see, when you care about someone, they feel that you have their best interest at heart and trust you because you decided to be more interested in them rather than trying to be interesting. Think about when you run to tell someone some great news, especially someone you care about. And you tell them this long, drawn-out story about how you conquered these trials and tribulations, and then you finally got to the goal that you wanted to achieve for so long, just for them to tell you that they finished that in half the time and had it twice as hard and finished out with more accolades than you. Or you ask someone about their accomplishment or their day, and they go on this long, drawn-out story, and it's so sad, and it's the worst thing in the world, and you're there, and you're being very empathetic, and you're listening, and then when it's your turn to talk, they totally ignore you. See, that's the opposite of caring. That's someone trying to be more interesting rather than be interested. And I love thinking about Cam when it comes to this, because Cam was so good at caring about me. He wasn't the first person to ever care, but I noticed how he did it. See, when Cam would come to me and help me out when it comes to poetry, he'd ask me some deeper questions to get to know me and see where I was coming from. Well, George, who do you want to be? George, what's holding you back? George, what are you passionate about? And as I dive into these answers and I get so prolific and so long about it, I noticed it. It hit me. You see, Cam wasn't asking me these questions so that I would segue to talk about him. He wasn't asking me these questions to check a box. He wasn't just doing it just to say he did it. He genuinely was interested in my interest. And an amazing thing about the way Cam cares, he cared consistently. And that actually brings us to our next skill that we need to unlock, which is time. Now, time is going to be associated with our pointer finger. So you can remember this like pointing at your watch or pointing at a clock. But a pointer finger will get time. And remember, caring is at our thumb. But why time? I understand I gotta care because I need to positively affect people. If we change the world, I gotta change people. Yeah. But what does time have to do with anything? Well, to put it short, people are obsessed with time. I guarantee you probably have a watch right now. And if you don't have a watch, you probably have a phone. And if you unlock your phone, the first thing you're gonna see, besides notifications, is the time blaring right at you with a calendar. If you look at the bottom right corner of the screen in your computer, you probably see time. It's one of the most precious things to humans. We use time for credibility and validity. Think about when you go for a job interview. The employer wants to know about your skills, but they also want to know, well, how long have you been using those set skills? Okay, doctor, before you do my open heart surgery, how long have you actually been a doctor? Before I give you this case, lawyer, how long have you actually been a lawyer? We also use time to justify moving forward in our romantic relationships. Well, we've known each other for about 3 months, so I think it's time to have kids, move in together, and get married. We also use it at the end of our relationships. Well, I feel like you don't have enough time for me. I don't have time for this anymore. You see, humans cannot control time. We have the audacity to try to manage it. We can't hold it, but we actually have the power to give it. Gary Chapman has a book called The 5 Love Languages. And in this book, one of the languages is actually quality time. You see, quality time is different than just any type of time. And I know you might be thinking, well, isn't all the time I give quality? But not necessarily. Gary likes to describe it as, okay, we're together, but am I really here? Am I really present in the moment with you? That's what quality time could look like. And I like this because I could see it when Cam and I would have our interactions. You see, when Cam was caring about me, it was quality time. There was no distractions. He didn't make me feel bad for calling him late or early. He didn't make me feel like it was transactional. I didn't feel like I owed him anything. He never asked for time back when we would spend time together. The amazing thing about the way Cam gave quality time is that he cared about me even when I wasn't around. You see, Cam was my mentor when it came to poetry. And I leaned on him a lot to become a better artist and to be a better public speaker and to be more confident in myself. So on his own time, he set it aside to come up with a plan for me to be better. And when we link up, well, he'd show me where he's been spending his time. And it was on me. You see, the key to quality time is not just having it, but to use it intentionally and actually being there. Dale Carnegie has a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And in this book, Dale talks about, well, if you're busy, you owe it to that person to kind of stop what you're doing, give them your full undivided attention to let them know that you want to hear exactly what they have to say. But you just need a couple more minutes or maybe an hour or a day or so, whatever it is, so you can hear their whole story and help them out. Or just listen to them vent. Now, I know I'm talking a lot about giving your time away. And it's very important if you want to connect to people and positively affect them. But if we're going to change the world, I'm going to need you to also take time for yourself. How do you expect to change the world if you don't spend time here? Spend time here. You see, we can't change the world if we don't take time for ourselves to worry about the things that bother us as well. And this actually leads us to our last skill that you need to unlock, which is vulnerability. Now, I know I'm talking about superpowers, and a lot of you are like, wait, vulnerability? I want to know about my powers. How do I use my powers to change the world, George? Not weaknesses. Well, actually, I didn't say weakness. I said vulnerability. And if you think about the first question I asked you, I asked, if you could have any superpower, what would you pick? And a lot of powers that I mentioned, we've seen superheroes in comics, TV shows, and movies use those powers. An amazing thing about superheroes is that most, if not all, have some type of vulnerability. And the crazy thing about that, that's what we love about them. You see, maybe it's because vulnerability makes them relatable. And actually, vulnerability makes you relatable. Now remember, we're using our superpower to change the world. And if we're going to change the world, then we need to positively affect people. And if we're going to positively affect them, then we need to care. But we also need to connect. And to connect, you need to be relatable. And one way to be relatable is to be vulnerable. So at this point, you've unlocked caring and quality time. Now together, they're the foundation to become a really great therapist. Now, therapy is definitely a great way to change the world, but it's not the superpower I'm talking about unlocking. You see, being human is the last element you need in order to use your superpower to change the world. Dr. Brené Brown is a huge advocate for vulnerability, and she says that people who wade into discomfort and vulnerability and tell the truth about their stories are the real badasses. That means if I let down my guard and I tell you my stories, I tell you my struggles, together we grow, we give, we begin to trust, we love. And you see, the superheroes that we love the most, despite their amazing feats that they have, they still have a vulnerability. And for some reason, that makes them stronger. You see, Cam was vulnerable with me all the time. What a lot of people don't know is that in Osan Air Base, South Korea, if you're stationed there, most of the times you're separated from your family, and you're there for at least a year. You see, Cam would tell me about his shortcomings. He'd tell me about the things that bother him the most, but he also tell me about the things that make him the happiest, and his aspirations. And that's because vulnerability is not only things that make you sad, But vulnerability can also be the things that make you happy. So think about your favorite place to go, your favorite pet, your favorite person, your favorite thing to do. And you go and you tell somebody about those things, and they don't really react the way that you thought they would. It kind of hurts a little bit. Now on the surface, you might be thinking, well, why does this bother me? It makes me happy. Why do I care if anybody else really likes it too? Well, because it was a vulnerability moment that you shared with them. You shared something that meant a lot to you. You see, Cam took this skill and applied this power to his poetry. This man would get on stage in front of strangers and friends and tell them about the things that bothered him the most, the mistakes that he would make. But he'd also tell them about his aspirations as well and the things that he was proud of. And he challenged me to do the same thing. And I was very apprehensive at first, but I'm telling you, the reaction was overwhelming. A room full of strangers became a room full of family in a 5-minute poem. So imagine what it'd be like if I was just vulnerable with somebody one-on-one. If we normalize what it's like to be human, you'll see how people will change the way they interact with you. You see, vulnerability is always perceived as a weakness, but I think it's something that has an even huger impact. And for that, we'll assign vulnerability to our pinky. So now, you've unlocked all 3 skills. The first one being caring, the next one being quality time, and then finally, you've unlocked vulnerability. And if you put all these skills together, you get your superpower, which is the American Sign Language of I love you. That's it. Grand finale, ladies and gentlemen. Love is how you change the world. And I know it sounds like a cheesy song that love would change the world, but trust me, I even have an example of how it's already changing the world today and how it changed the world in the past. A lot of us know Mahatma Gandhi, known as the Great-Souled One. You see, Gandhi used passive resistance to fight for Indian immigrants, Hindus, and Muslims. You see, Gandhi loved everyone. Gandhi cared about everyone. He gave them quality time. He even spent some time in jail for them. And he also was vulnerable with everyone. Okay, but did Gandhi really change the world for me? Let me keep going further. We all know who Martin Luther King Jr. is. The civil rights activist that fought for equality in the United States using passive resistance as well in peaceful protest. You see, Martin cared about everyone. You see, Martin also spent a lot of quality time. He spent most of his life serving others. He too spent some time in jail for what he believed in. And then Martin was also sharing a mutual vulnerability with all of his supporters, and he even had his own things that he was vulnerable about. Martin Luther King Jr. used love to change the world. But what does that have to do with Gandhi? Well, when Martin Luther King Jr. was alive, he was asked who inspired him. He didn't say a church member, didn't say a family member, didn't say some popular person that we've all seen on TV, other than Mahatma Gandhi. The amazing thing is that these 2 men never met. That means that Gandhi's love echoed around the globe for years and then reached a man in the United States, and he too used love that he received indirectly from Gandhi. You see, love has been changing the world. It's changed the world in the past, and it's changing the world today. As a spoken word artist, I describe performing as the most vulnerable fun I can't wait to have again. I put love into each piece because my goal is to connect and affect people. And I smile about it because technically, Cam did that for me. You see, what a lot of people don't know is that when I met Cam, I was fighting depression and losing. But if Cam didn't care, give me quality time, and be vulnerable, and ultimately just showing me some love, then I probably wouldn't be here today. Because not only did love kickstart my career as a poet, but it also saved my life. Now, if you see me outside of this forum, in the street, please do not run up to me without any context and say, "George, will you love me?" Because then my wife is going to kill us both, and then I guess the world is definitely going to change for both of us. But seriously, what I love about this concept is that there's no hard science. There's no math, there's no formula, just human. Just being a person. And that's what we're all here for, right? To make the world better for ourselves, for each other, and for future generations. If we can remember to care for people, give them quality time, and reciprocate vulnerability, we will in turn show and give them love. And because of that, they will go out and change the world because of you. So now that you have these skills, remember, I love you. Now go change the world.
Closing us out this evening is Shabs, an actress and comedian and singer-songwriter from London, a friend of mine too, joined by guitarist Sunil Taylor, an awesome guitarist that never fails to blow me away. And they're performing a song called Unsent, which we all made together last year, and we released that song last year, and it's the first time I'm hearing this song that I was involved in writing live. So it's a bit of an emotional moment for me. I really hope you enjoy the performance as much as I do. Here's Shabs to tell you more.
Hi, my name's Shabs, and today's event is called Unknown, Unfinished, Undone. So when I was deciding which of my songs to sing today, it made sense for me to choose my song Unsent. Not just because it has the same prefix as those three words, although that is very fitting, but because its meaning is connected to those three words in their own special way. The song itself is a letter, a love letter, which was left unsent. And of course this means that its outcome was left unknown. Now, the unknown can be a really scary thing, I'll be the first to admit that. But if we choose to let it could be a really empowering way for us to grow. It can help us see the positive things around us and find new things within ourselves. This of course can mean that we leave things prematurely unfinished in order to create that brighter future for ourselves. And even though we might not have gotten to say the things we wanted to say or do the things that we wanted to do, hindsight is a glorious thing. There is no reason for it to let ourselves become undone. We can all afford to embrace some of the unknown a bit more. We can all afford to stop worrying about the things that we've left unfinished. And we can all afford to stop ourselves becoming undone when we do so. And maybe, just maybe, we can relish a little bit in the things that we've left unsent.
Paragraph starts, remember those days when we were young and things were okay. I wrote it all down, I read it out loud, then I threw it away. I left it unsent. Why did I let it fade? Somewhere in a cloud are the words that didn't reach you. I showed up, I left them unsaid with how much I love you. Somewhere in my mind are the words I never sent you. I froze up, I left them unsent with how much I miss you. Paragraph ends, remember my face. I just needed some space. I wrote it all down, I read it out loud, then I threw it away. I left it unsent. Why did I let it fade? Somewhere in a cloud are the words that didn't reach you. I showed up, I left them unsaid with how much I love you. Somewhere in my mind are the words I wrote on paper. How time took goodbyes, and I chose not to evidently days. Remember the last time I saw you in the hotel room was too much for you. How we made up our own funny ways. Somewhere in a cloud are the words that didn't reach you. I choked up, I left them unsent with how much I miss you. Ooh, I'll never forget my face. I hope that you'll find a way to reach me. The words I wrote for you and yours come leading. I wrote it all down, I read it out loud, then I threw it away. I left it unsent. Why did I let it fade? That sounds nice in my ears.
We're now going to go for a break, and after the break we're going to have a Q&A session. Hello everyone, welcome back. We're now at our Q&A session right here at the University of Essex. I really hope you enjoyed listening to all our speakers and watching all of our incredible performers. I'm now joined by Sarah Jane Mannering and Faustina Edward, and we want to, if you've got any questions for them, please let us know and I'd love to pass them on. But first of all, Sarah Jane, a lot of the work you do with birds has to do with conservation. Could you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, I think really if you get to know and understand birds a little bit better, then you start to think about more things like their environment. And I think conservation starts on a local level. So if you go out, and like I was saying, bird watching is a really popular, hot topic at the moment, and if local communities start using green spaces and it becomes a haven for wildlife and activity, then they're naturally going to want to save that for future generations.
Yeah, and it becomes that thing where we defend what we know and what we love.
Yeah.
And I was telling you after you recorded your talk that ever since hearing your talk, I've been more aware of what's around me, and I took my headphones off, stopped listening to music and started listening to the bird song, which is rare because I love listening to music. No, we're also joined by Faustina, and when we met and when I saw the name of the talk, Glitter Effect, I nearly laughed. But tell me what it's like to be a 25-year-old who loves unicorns and glitter unapologetically.
Unapologetically. I don't know, like people always think that it's so strange, but through my blog I get to really explain what it's all about. So basically on my blog, which you mentioned earlier, called The Unicorn Project, I have this series called Glitter Talks, and basically it's just every month talking about something positive. So last month I spoke about vision boards, 1 month I did about my stammer and stuff like that, just to encourage people and spread glitter.
I love that. I think we should all spread glitter and positivity in our life some way. And Sarah Jane, if you could be any type of bird, which bird would you be?
I'd probably be the little burrowing owl that jumped in on my rehearsal. Yeah, because he's cheeky.
And tell us about that. So have you got birds flying around in your house then?
Yeah, I have a couple of them. Yeah, they come and visit me. When the weather's a bit cold, they come and stay with me.
Fantastic. That must be so amazing. And Faustina, you say you've got a vision board. What are some key things on your vision board right now?
Oh wow, I would say that the number one thing, my TED Talk actually was on my vision board. It's been on there since 2018. So this happening today has just been absolutely mind-blowing that it's happening. But other things on there is just like to complete my degree successfully and get a good law job because I want to be a lawyer and stuff like that. So it's a mix of professional and personal and just some random things like traveling and stuff like that on there.
Yeah, I love that, and I know that hosting an event like today was on my vision board, though I don't think any of us could have imagined the circumstances, technical difficulties, honestly, and all of the stress we've been feeling behind the scenes, but we take that stress with a smile on our face. And Sarah Jane, you spoke about there's been like a record number of people getting involved with bird watching. what are some really good resources to help identify the birds people are seeing?
I think the best place to look really is anything to do with the RSPB. They normally put sites up where rare bird visitors are, and there's a lot of good sort of conservation areas that they look after, so I would check out RSPB.
And if there's one thing you could ask the audience to do after leaving here today, what would that be?
I think it's really to respect local areas, so even if it's just picking up rubbish that you see, and just take a pride in your local areas, because they become havens for wildlife and it's something that you can directly enjoy.
That is fantastic, and I'm definitely going to try. I'm going to give it my best shot. And Faustina, how about you? If you could tell the audience to do one thing, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, well, from my talk, just really try your best to spread positivity and joy and all of that, because you never know the impact you can have on someone, and it can be, again, like in the next week or sometimes 2 years down the line, somebody tells you something that you did for them. So it pays to be a kind person and someone who spreads positivity or glitter.
Yeah, be kind to others, be kind to the environment. Thank you both for joining me here today and coming back to do a little Q&A. Thank you so much. We're going to change over our speakers now and speak to some of our other wonderful speakers. See you in a second. Hello guys, welcome back to the Q&A. I'm joined by Lexus, Sun and Shabs, two performers at today's event, and it's so lovely to hear them perform live in the studio, because as you know, we've all tested negative, we're all in a big bubble, completely safe. And so it's lovely, so good to have live performances, even though we had some technical problems, which was pretty nerve-wracking being in the studio and trying to make sure everything works. Now Lexus, Petrol Tower is a song that came together during the rehearsal process. It wasn't finished, you know, when we had our last rehearsal.
Yeah.
So how do you find your creative process works, and how do you manage that?
Actually, the song is still not yet finished. Like in my mind, like cause it's
unfinished.
It's
unfinished.
Exactly.
Undone.
That's why I'm here.
Unfinished. Perfect.
But yeah, no, the song I wrote when I was back home, like last year in quarantine. You know, like COVID. That
I know.
Kind of, you know, that season. I was living alone, so kind of tough. It gets kind of tough, you know. It got kind of tough. So yeah, I still haven't, like, in my mind, like I still haven't finished it. Like I think there are more things that could be put in the song. Yeah, we'll see how it goes, you know, see how it goes.
And Shabs also, Unsent's a song we made together, and it was great to see it live. And as Lexus said, it was a tough time when he wrote that song, and I know we've channeled plenty of tough experiences into our songs. What's that like, performing a song that has so much emotional resonance?
Well, it's just amazing. For me, it's just to be able to perform in the middle of the pandemic. It's probably the first gig I've done in about a year and a half, probably longer. It just feels good to be able to get back out there, and then for a song to be as meaningful as that to both of us, it's just felt really lovely.
Yeah. And Lexus, you said in your bio that you study law, but you don't want to be a lawyer. What do you want to do?
I don't know. You know, what life takes me. Now, I love studying law. Studying law is very interesting. Like, just studying about how the law regulates the whole society, it's fascinating to me. And especially on the philosophy side of the law, it's just cool. But studying law and practicing law is a completely different thing. I don't think I think I know that for a fact that I can't stay in the office and, you know, just in front of the camera all the time. No, not camera, what am I talking about? In front of the computer all the time. I can't do that. That's a big no-no for me. So, yeah, practice. So, I don't know. I mean, I've always wanted to do music, of course. But, you know, we'll see. Uncertainties and unfinished.
Yeah, exactly. It's not done till it's done. Exactly. And I know it's so hard to balance that sort of work, life, and Shabs, you know, you always love singing, but you have to obviously pay the bills, and you're a teacher. How do you balance sort of being creative and paying the rent?
It's definitely something I'm still working on, Joe. But I think it's just important to, you know, prioritise what actually brings you joy. Not to say that my teacher job doesn't bring me joy, by the way. I do love that as well. But finding the right balance, you need to not be hard on yourself and just find those moments when you do have a bit of energy. And because it is a thing that you love to do, music's a thing that I love to do, it gives me energy. So if I treat it as like an energy source as opposed to, you know, a thing that I have to do, then yeah, I'm still figuring it out.
You're still figuring it out. And you say it's unknown.
Same.
It's
I don't
unknown.
know.
And see, I said at the start of the event that this vague theme might be so difficult to relate, but it can be related to anything, just as we've worked out. Now, Lexus, as I said to the speakers earlier, if there's one thing that people could take away from your song today, a message that they carry forward into their life, what would that message be?
From my song?
Yeah, or any, from your song. Tricky question, I know, but we're thinking fast.
I don't know. I think one of the things that I learned is change is constant. Like in this universe, everything is keep on changing. So good can be bad, and bad can be good. So remember that. Like if it's like when you're in a tough time, remember that change will always happen, and bad can be good. And So
exactly.
Remember that.
I love that. I think that's a good motto to carry forward. And Shabs, how about you? The message of the song Unsent, we talk a bit about how it relates to the theme. Sort of what message do you want people to take away from that song today?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is to relinquish the control of the things that you haven't had the chance to finish doing, and stop being hard on yourself in general. I know something that I do all the time is punish myself, but actually seeing things more as a positive thing. The reason why it's been left undone or unfinished is it can sometimes be good for you. So be alright with things being left undone.
Definitely. I feel like there's a balance of don't leave it unsent. Tell people how you feel before it's too late. There's also don't leave it unsent. Don't forget to tell yourself that you're important. Tell yourself when it's getting stressful and you need a break. And also, some things are better left unsent. And I know that from personal experience. Lexus, Sun, Shabs, thank you so much for joining me for this Q&A session. We're going to go back inside and talk to the rest of our speakers, and I can't wait to see them. See you in 10 minutes.
Thank you.
So it was this, I really wanted to use this questionnaire to test and to analyze my teachers' motivation and demotivation, but this proved to be the wrong way of analyzing their motivation. So that was for me the worst challenge that I could have faced at the time.
Yeah, definitely. And then working at a university, what's that like?
Well, it's not what you would expect, I would say. But yeah, it's a bit different. But again, you are welcome to share your obstacles with your colleagues and so on, but not so much in publications. So that was what I was discussing earlier. So it's good to embrace these challenges in publications as well.
And if there's something that you're researching that you'd most like to know the answer to, what would that be?
And what do you mean? Say that again.
So if you're researching something, you're trying to find something out, what thing would you most like the answer to?
That's a very big, very difficult question. I don't know. I think I would like to find out how can I help teachers so they can thrive in their profession. I think that's the aim of my research. I'm always trying to talk to teachers and listen to them and to the challenges that they have in the classrooms. So yeah, basically, what are the solutions to teachers' stress and demotivation? How can we help them? That would be what I want to find out.
I love that. I think that's really powerful, and listening and then trying to find solutions from someone's truth. I think that's really, really nice and really powerful. And so what's one thing that you'd love the audience to take away? If you speak directly to the audience, what would you like to tell them?
I think I would just like to tell them that every time that they read a journal article or a book with scientific studies, just remember that not everything is what it seems. So there were struggles behind those perfect investigations, and I think that's the only thing that I want them to take away.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Lorena. I love listening to your talk. I'm so happy you came back for the Q&A. We're now going to get set up to switch over to talk to the speakers that couldn't be with us but are watching us virtually. So I'm going to get ready to go and talk to them. Thank you so much. I'd love to go round and tell everyone to share how they found today, how they're feeling now. And, this is such a bucket list thing doing a TED Talk. So I'd love to go around and I'll read your name out so you know it's your turn. So Lydia, could you start us off, please? Tell us how you found today's event speaking and how you feel afterwards with all the build-up we've had.
Yeah, I think it's been a great event, really. Me personally, I've enjoyed witnessing everyone's talks, even Sarah's about birds and how much we can learn from those, to George's. There's been such a diverse range. And from an audience perspective, I've very much enjoyed it. As for how I feel after delivering mine, I feel a lot better, relieved, as I'm sure everyone does. I think the anticipation more than anything is just like so overwhelming. But once you've done it and got it out of the way, you feel like just a lot better and happier. But yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I can relate so much. And I know that with all the technical difficulties we've had, and we've been working, making sure things are plugged in, trying to switch over audio and cameras, it's been just as hectic here as you've been feeling inside. Mira, how did you find it today?
Well, I was very nervous, to be honest. So I think it's the same as Lydia. I was pretty relieved but I think more than anything, I was excited for everyone to hear what I had to say, because I know a lot of my friends and family who are watching in the audience, they were excited, and hopefully I made them proud by sharing my message, and hopefully it's helped a lot of people. And like Lydia said, I think hearing what everyone had to say, such incredibly wonderful ideas, and just so much I've learned from everyone. I think it was such an incredible day, and like so many ideas in one day.
Yeah, it was amazing, and I'm sure you've done everyone proud, because it was lovely listening to you today, Mira. And George, how do you feel now?
And I feel like I'm finally breathing. From the moment I got notified saying that I got selected to be a speaker to today, I felt a lot of anxiety. I was telling my wife, I was like, man, I need to make sure I don't sound like this is a fever dream, and that it's actually a talk that makes sense, because I feel like I'm all over the place. But what a lot of people don't see is that the other speakers helped each other a lot. We really leaned on each other, and that actually made things a lot easier. The practices we had with the team, that helped a lot. So I think the support I had made me a lot less nervous than I probably would have been without you guys. So.
Yeah, and I feel like that carries over from the message of your talk about really being there to help each other. And it's been so lovely working with everyone. I know it's been so busy, and it's been such, like it felt like it just flew by. And Vanessa, how do you feel? You performed a beautiful poem for us today, and I really appreciate that. Could you tell us a bit more about how you feel after performing that?
Kind of like how everyone else feels, just relieved. Just very happy that we got to do this. This has been a great event, and yeah, I'm just happy that we did it. We did it, y'all.
It's done. We've done it. Well, not yet. And I still haven't. I love how George said now he can breathe. I'm not breathing yet. So Anthony, are you breathing yet? How are you feeling? How did it go?
Well, yeah, I'm breathing, even though it's morning over here. I think I'll be going to sleep after. It was funny, and I'm trying to make sense of all this. But throughout my entire talk, one of my biggest supporters who helped me prepare for today had his timing off and was texting me all throughout my talk, and I didn't turn my phone off, and so my watch was buzzing the whole time, and it's like, oh my God. So a little distracting, and again, this is somebody who's one of my biggest fans and helped me so much, and yet here he is disturbing me in the middle of my talk. But that's again, the virtual events with the technology difficulties, and trying to bring people in from all around the world, and what we try to accomplish and the message we try to spread. Life's not perfect.
Yeah, and I think that's really right. And that goes back to Lydia's talk about sort of accepting that the journey serves you better than the destination. And I know things along the way can't be perfect. And even if you reach that perfect destination or you don't, I feel like that journey is really important. So Lydia, what are some tips to help really, connect to that journey, even if it's not going so great at that time?
I think honestly, sometimes you just have to accept that it is what it is. Like, you've just got to accept in the moment, this is the situation. And the future is not really in your control to an extent. So take what you can learn from now and use it when you can in the future. I mean, I'm sure all of us have been in really difficult situations at times, and we've been in great ones as well. And, the only difference between those two is that you're learning more in the difficult situations, in my opinion. So just try and be strong and push through until you can really get the end result that you need.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's really true, and we really must remember that sometimes. And Mira, you published a research paper at such a young age. Could you tell us more about that, please? Because I'm fascinated to know more.
Well, Joe, I'm quite privileged because I got to work in the hospital and I'd been shadowing quite a few doctors from a very young age because of my interest in medicine and healthcare. So, while I was working with one of the infectious diseases specialists, I noticed that while they were trying their best to explain how tuberculosis works and how the disease needs to be treated, it wasn't always fully understood by the patient. So I decided to work on a project with that specialist, and both of us decided to conduct a knowledge aptitude perception survey. So we worked with 500 patients and we interviewed them and try to understand why we weren't able to make the connect. And we did find some very good results. In fact, tuberculosis is a disease that is spread through the respiratory route, but 73% of our participants thought it was genetic because they thought, I live with my family and I live with my parents. So if when they have it, I have it. So they thought that it was genetic. So there's obviously a disconnect between what the doctor is telling them versus what the patients are actually understanding. So I thought that was very interesting to pursue, and our recommendations on how to fix those problems were taken in by the government of India, and they have made suggestions based on our recommendations. So
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I think that's really good solution focused thinking to go in there and try and do some research to try and find the answers. And I feel like the fact that that had a knock-on impact, whether it was taken into a small consideration or a large consideration, it's amazing to be involved in making change. And that goes back to George's talk about how we can make change. And I know we had some conversations when we were recording the interview and during your talk, you talk about being present. And I feel like that's something we're finding continuously more difficult as we go on through the pandemic. We've got our phones, we're not communicating in real life. How would you really be present and show people you care?
Again, I think you have to be intentional. You have to know that you have, for example, Anthony said that his notifications were going off on his watch. Typically, without any, if he wasn't under pressure, he probably would instantly look if we were having a conversation, because we've been trained to kind of go away from that. If you intentionally make sure you're paying attention to somebody and giving them the attention that you would want, then just that little bit of effort makes a huge difference. Especially in, I would say, like times now, we all have social media to an extent. We have something constantly pulling us to our phones or pulling us away from the person we're talking to.
Yeah, and I feel like it's to be aware of that and know that you need to have that self-restraint. And I know, I'm as bad as anyone with it, and I just hope I can get better. And I think listening to your talk really helped me be more conscious of that. And Vanessa, you perform your wonderful original poem on time, and I know that during the rehearsals you were still working on it. Can you tell us what inspired that poem, please?
Well, so I wrote it. It's based on a true story, and it's kind of how it was. It's kind of like the pre-story of how me and my husband said I love you. But yeah.
That's lovely. And what's it like documenting something like that? Because I know, sometimes when we write poetry, it can be like really personal things we put into it. And then when you're performing something like that, and I know you're a spoken word artist, and that's something that's completely new to me. How do you find the strength to perform such vivid emotion?
It's just there. Wow, this is a good question. How do I find the strength? I don't know. Sometimes I feel very weak. Sometimes I feel very weak doing it because that's my vulnerable side. This when I'm performing any of my poetry at any time, that's me being vulnerable. I don't really feel strong until after I do it. Kind of like everything else, right? You're like scared and you do it and you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then after you're like, yeah, I did it. So how do I find the strength? It just comes afterwards. Kind of like when you work in the gym and then like you just realize out of nowhere, like, dang, I'm kind of swole.
I love all of those examples, and I think it's so relatable, especially to us all at the event today, speaking, performing, hosting. It's one of those things where you feel completely nervous beforehand. You don't have that strength beforehand, but then afterwards you think, oh, that wasn't so bad, but you're never going to think that wasn't so bad beforehand. And Anthony, being an individual and finding yourself, and it must have been hard, you know, when you left your job and you had those knock-on effects and, you know, all of the personal trauma attached to that. How did you stay focused?
How did I stay focused? Focused on what? Living, breathing?
on pursuing the dreams that you had.
You know, when I left the banking industry in 2007 and started becoming a coach and a speaker, Julie, the person I talk about in my talk, was the first door that opened for me. Nothing I was looking for, and from there, just a chain of events happened serendipitously that showed me I was on the right path. And I actually took a little bit of a hiatus from doing the work I do full time for about 3 years. And in March of last year, right before COVID hit, my wife suggested that I go back to doing what I love full time because she knew that that's what made me happy. And from that, another unsolicited connection was made that serendipitously just opened up doors and opened up a path. And he's actually the reason I'm here today with you guys, because he's a TED coach. And so, you know, I find that when you're on your right path, things happen for you. When you're continuously beating your head against the wall and trying to make progress, even though you might be, I would say that's a good sign that maybe you might want to look at where you're actually heading.
Yeah, and I think that's really powerful. And thank you for sharing that with us, Anthony. And thank you for your talk today. Now I'm going to go around each of you and ask, what's the one thing you'd like the audience to take away from your speech or performance today? Lydia, would you like to start us off, please?
Oh, God. I think it's just to accept like the moment for what it is. Don't worry so much about like the end result that you're going to get. I mean, it's out of your control, so just try and like enjoy and learn what you can right now.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful message, and thank you so much, Lydia, for speaking at today's event and for that wonderful closing message. Mira, how about you? What's one thing you'd like the audience to take away from your talk today?
I think the one thing I would want them to know is health is wealth, and treat your body like your most valuable possession. So don't be afraid to ask questions when you don't understand something, and advocate for your own health, because nobody else is going to advocate for your health. So
yeah, I think that's a really strong message, and we need to ask when we need it, and I feel like that's so important. So thank you so much, Mira, for your amazing talk, and thank you for that closing message. George, how about you?
I'd have to say, don't be afraid to say I love you. We like to save that for our romantic relationships, but don't be afraid to tell your friends I love you. That person that held the door open for you, it might be weird for you or for them, but it's going to make their day. So just don't be afraid to say I love you.
I really love that message, George, because I know that talking to my friends, I sort of have that thing where you sort of want to say it, but you don't want to take it the wrong way. And I feel like it's just about having the courage to tell them that it's okay for friends to love each other. It's okay for strangers to love each other. And that doesn't mean anything weird. That just means we live in a society where we can love each other unapologetically. Thank you so much, George, for that wonderful closing message and your amazing talk today. Thank you. Now, Vanessa, you performed a wonderful poem called On Time. What's one thing you'd like the audience to take away from that?
Don't stress about whether you're too early or too late. Just go with the flow. Whatever happens in the moment, just happens in the moment. Don't be scared. If you feel like this is right, then that's right. You know, no one can tell you any different, not even time.
Yeah. And I feel like that goes back to the theme of it's unknown. And, you know, nothing ever really has a time until it's done. And I feel like things happen for a reason. So thank you so much, Vanessa, for sharing that closing message and performing your fantastic poem with us today. And now, Anthony, what's one message you'd like the audience to take away from your talk?
Pay attention to that voice inside your head that's trying to get your attention. The one that says, hey, that looks like fun, or wouldn't it be cool, or you sure that's the right thing for you? It's talking to you for a reason. And it's smarter than you probably give it credit for. So pay attention.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I feel like that's so important. We've got to listen to that sort of gut instinct in the back of our head telling us, I don't want to do this. Maybe I shouldn't. Should I listen to myself? And I feel like that's a conflict we've really got to try and unpick and listen to. So thank you so much, Anthony, for speaking at our event. It's been lovely having you. And thanks for waking up early to do your rehearsals. I know you're joining us from over the sea. So thank you so much. Right. Thank you to all of our wonderful speakers and performers that joined us at today's event. I really appreciate it. And it's been lovely listening to each one of you talk and share your ideas, share your personal stories, and be honest and vulnerable. And I know today there's been some technical difficulties, and I must apologize for that. You know, we're working with what we've got. And I know during a pandemic, it's so hard to deal with, especially when nothing works and the connection just fails, the cameras break down, the sound doesn't work. But I feel like the most important part of the TEDx event today is not how you see it. It's not how you hear it. If the quality is bad, it doesn't matter, because we're here to spread ideas with one another. And the most important part of the event is that you may have got a new idea or taken forward something from one of the talks or performances today. And you can use that in your life and enact some small part of change. So I really hope some ideas have spread over to you. And even if not all of them have, I'm sure you can find something relatable in every single talk, because I have. And I must say, as a host hosting this event, it's been stressful, but what's carried me through is the love and absolute dedication of each one of our performers, speakers, everyone that's here today, whether they're to support their friends or family or loved ones, Petra and Timir, who are organizing the event, the whole of the TEDx Society, everyone helping us with the technical stuff so it doesn't fail again. And I really appreciate it. You've all been wonderful, and all of your passion, all of your ideas, we've all come together and worked our very best to put on the best show for you that's possible. And I know what's possible isn't always, you know, polished, but what happens is what happens, and we don't know what will happen, and it's not finished until it's finished. So it's time for me to wrap up. I want to thank all of the team and sending all the love to everyone still watching and everyone that came today, because I really think the power of sharing ideas is so important. Now, today's event was called Unknown, Unfinished, Undone. I've been your host, Joe Holmes, for today. Please go and look up all of our wonderful speakers, everyone involved, and tell them thank you. And I hope you've appreciated it today. It's not done until it's done. So goodbye, and I hope to see you again very soon.